My name is Austin Lawson. I'm 34 years old, and I've been working construction in Nashville, Tennessee since I was 22. I'm a foreman now, specializing in residential and commercial framing, with safety certifications that took me years to earn and a reputation that's opened doors across Davidson County. I've supervised crews on everything from luxury condos in the Gulch to massive warehouse projects in Antioch, managing budgets that sometimes exceeded $500,000. I drive a 2004 Ford F-150 that my father left me after he died in a construction accident when I was 26. The truck wasn't new when he bought it used in 2010, but together we spent 3 years bringing it back to life. Every Saturday morning, we'd be out in his garage, rebuilding the transmission, replacing brake lines, restoring the interior. He taught me that taking care of your tools meant they'd take care of you. That truck became more than transportation. It became a symbol of everything he'd taught me about work, integrity, and the value of doing things right. It's not pretty now. The paint has faded from royal blue to something closer to gray. There's a dent in the tailgate from the time I had to haul a load of steel beams to a job site in Murfreesboro. And the interior still smells like sawdust, coffee, and the leather conditioner I use every few months. The odometer shows 247,000 miles. But the engine purrs like it did the day we finished rebuilding it. That truck has carried everything from drywall to concrete mixers, has never left me stranded, and starts every morning without fail, just like my old man always did. My father taught me that a man's worth isn't measured by what he drives or what he wears, but by the quality of his work and the strength of his character. He'd worked construction for 32 years before that crane cable snapped on a job site in East Nashville. He taught me that integrity matters more than image, that showing up early and staying late matters more than showing off, and that the respect of your crew is worth more than any title or corner office. I live by those principles every single day. I live in a modest duplex in Antioch, not far from where I grew up. It's nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small garage where I keep my tools organized the way my father taught me. I wear Carhartt pants and steel-toed Red Wings most days, rotate through a collection of work shirts with company logos from jobs I've completed over the years. My weekends are split between maintaining the truck, reading construction trade magazines, and hiking in the woods outside the city, sometimes driving up to Percy Warner Park just to clear my head and think about the week ahead. My life is simple, deliberate, and comfortable. I save money, pay my bills on time, and sleep well at night, knowing I've earned every dollar through honest work. I never felt like I was missing anything until I started dating Madison Harper in early 2025. Madison was 31, a real estate marketing director for one of Davidson County's premier luxury developers, Pinnacle Residential Group. She'd been working in real estate marketing for 8 years, starting as an assistant right out of college and working her way up to directing campaigns for million-dollar homes and high-end condos downtown. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated showcase of marble kitchens, infinity pools, and staged living rooms that looked like they belonged in architectural magazines. She was beautiful, polished, and always knew exactly how to present herself. Every photo was perfectly lit. Every caption was crafted to sound effortlessly sophisticated. She understood lighting, angles, and the art of making ordinary moments look extraordinary. When we met at our mutual friend Sarah's housewarming party in March 2025, she seemed genuinely interested in my work. She asked detailed questions about framing techniques, about the difference between residential and commercial construction, about the projects I'd managed and the teams I'd led. She wanted to know about my father, about how I'd learned the trade, about what it was like to carry on his legacy. I thought she appreciated the craftsmanship, the history, the tradition of building things that would last. Looking back, I realized she was just exceptionally good at making people feel seen and understood. She had a talent for asking exactly the right questions, for making you think she genuinely cared about things that, in reality, she found beneath her notice. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and satisfying comebacks, you need to hear what happened next. Because what started as a relationship built on mutual respect turned into something much darker. And what ended in humiliation became the foundation for the most satisfying transformation of my life. The signs were there from the beginning, but I chose to ignore them. Little comments about my simple style that started appearing in our 3rd week of dating. Jokes about how I should dress up more, or post better content on social media, as if my Instagram account showcasing completed construction projects wasn't sophisticated enough for her standards. She'd make suggestions, always framed as helpful advice from someone who understood image and presentation. "Babe, you'd look so good in something more fitted," she'd say, running her fingers along the sleeve of one of my work shirts. Or, "Have you ever thought about trading that truck in for something newer? You could probably get a good deal with your credit score." I'd laugh it off, change the subject, make some joke about being too practical for fashion trends. I thought she was just being playful, maybe trying to help me see possibilities I hadn't considered. But the comments became more frequent, more pointed, always delivered with that same bright smile that made them sound like caring observations, rather than criticisms of who I was. She started mentioning her ex-boyfriend's BMW 5 Series more frequently, how smooth and quiet it was on highway drives to Atlanta for real estate conferences. She'd bring up her friend Chloe's partner, who worked in finance and drove an Audi Q7. How impressive it looked parked outside the country club, where Chloe's company held networking events. She'd show me Instagram posts from real estate industry colleagues, couples posing in front of luxury cars, vacation photos featuring rental Porsches in Miami, professional headshots taken beside gleaming vehicles that cost more than I made in 2 years. "Relationship goals, right?" she'd say, holding her phone screen toward me, showing me photos of people I'd never met living lives that seemed designed specifically for social media consumption. I'd nod and stay quiet, but inside something was shifting. I was beginning to understand that to Madison, I wasn't a partner. I wasn't someone she saw building a future with, someone whose values and work ethic she respected. I was a project, something temporary that needed upgrading, or worse. I was a placeholder, someone to occupy her time until something better, something more aligned with her image came along. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon in late June 2025. Madison had asked me to drive her to a luxury home showcase event downtown, a high-end open house for Pinnacle Residential Group's newest development, 3-bedroom condos starting at $850,000, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Cumberland River. She needed to be there to coordinate social media coverage, take photos of potential buyers touring the space, and network with other marketing professionals from competing luxury developers. I agreed to drive her, even though I knew it wasn't really my scene. These events were networking opportunities for real estate professionals, chances to see and be seen by the kind of people who considered a $1,000 monthly car payment a reasonable expense. I knew I'd be out of place among the designer suits and leather handbags, but Madison had asked, and I wanted to support her career, even if I didn't fully understand the world she worked in. I pulled up in front of her apartment complex at exactly 2 o'clock, the agreed-upon time, engine running smooth and steady, windows down to let in the warm Tennessee air. She walked out with 2 of her colleagues from Pinnacle, both women dressed in coordinated blazers and designer heels that probably cost more than I spent on work boots in a year. Their phones were already out, ready to document every moment of their sophisticated Saturday afternoon, creating content for Instagram stories that would showcase their professional success and lifestyle aspirations. The moment Madison saw my truck idling in the parking lot, her entire demeanor changed. She stopped on the sidewalk, looked at the F-150 with its faded paint and work-worn exterior, then looked at her colleagues, and then she laughed. It wasn't the warm, genuine laugh I'd fallen for during our early dates. This was loud, performative, and designed to establish distance between herself and what she was seeing. "Are we seriously showing up in a construction truck?" she said, her voice carrying across the parking lot, loud enough for residents on their balconies to hear. "This looks like we're here to install drywall, not tour million-dollar homes. I thought you were joking when you said you'd pick us up in your work truck." Her colleagues giggled, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of her comment, but unwilling to challenge their superior. One of them whispered something I couldn't make out from the driver's seat, and they both laughed again, the sound sharp and cutting in the summer air. The other one said, loud enough for me to hear clearly, "Maybe we should call an Uber. I mean, we're supposed to be marketing luxury lifestyle, right? Image matters in this business." I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead through the windshield at nothing in particular. My chest felt tight, my throat felt raw, but I didn't say a word. I didn't defend the truck, didn't explain its history, didn't remind Madison of all the conversations we'd had about my father and what this vehicle meant to me. I just smiled, swallowed hard, and waited for them to make their decision about whether they were getting in or finding alternative transportation. They eventually climbed into the cab, still discussing the vehicle as if I weren't there, as if the man who maintained it and drove it every day couldn't hear their commentary. The ride downtown was silent on my end. They talked and laughed about property values, marketing strategies, and upcoming luxury developments, as if nothing significant had happened, as if publicly humiliating someone wasn't worth acknowledging or apologizing for. But I wasn't really there anymore. My body was driving, following GPS directions to the downtown address. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. I was running through every moment of the past 4 months. Every dismissive comment about my clothes, every suggestion that I needed upgrading, every comparison to other people's lifestyles and vehicles. I was connecting dots I'd been trying to ignore, seeing patterns I'd been hoping were coincidental. And I realized something with absolute crystal clear certainty. This relationship was over. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. Madison had shown me exactly who she was and what I represented to her. And there was no coming back from that moment of public humiliation. Whatever feelings I'd had for her, whatever future I'd imagined we might build together, died in that parking lot under the weight of her laughter and her colleagues' agreement. 2 days later, before I could even bring myself to initiate the conversation I knew we needed to have, Madison sent me a text message that arrived at 3:47. On a Tuesday afternoon, while I was reviewing blueprints for a medical office complex we were framing in Green Hills, the message was carefully crafted, the kind of breakup text that sounded thoughtful and mature, while actually being calculated to make her look like the reasonable party. Hey Austin, I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few days, and I just don't think we're right for each other long term. We're from different worlds, you know? I need someone who's more aligned with where I'm at in my life right now. Someone who shares my vision for the future. I hope you understand. You're a good guy, and I wish you all the best. I stared at the message for a long time, reading it 3 or 4 times, noting how she'd managed to break up with me while making it sound like she was doing me a favor. Then I typed back a single line. I understand. And I did understand. More than she realized, more than she probably intended. The irony wasn't lost on me that she thought she was in control of this situation, that she was the one making the decision and ending things on her terms. But the truth was, that comment in front of her colleagues had already given me all the answers I needed about who Madison really was and what I actually meant to her. The breakup text was just confirmation of what I'd already figured out during that silent drive downtown. I didn't feel heartbroken. I didn't feel angry or betrayed. What I felt was something much more powerful and useful: clarity. Crystal clear, undeniable clarity about exactly where I stood in her world and exactly what kind of person I'd been trying to build a relationship with. And underneath that clarity was a quiet determination that surprised even me, a sense that this ending might actually be the beginning of something much more important. That same week, I started making moves, not out of spite or wounded pride, but out of necessity and long overdue self-reflection. I'd been thinking about my future for months before Madison entered my life, questioning what came next in my career trajectory, what the next logical step might be for someone with my experience and skill set. I loved construction work, the problem solving, the teamwork, the satisfaction of seeing empty lots transformed into functional buildings that would serve their communities for decades. But I'd been doing it for 12 years now, and while I'd advanced from crew member to foreman, from local residential projects to major commercial developments, I was still fundamentally working for other people. I was building other people's visions, making other people's dreams come to life, generating profit that went into other people's bank accounts. I had skills, experience, and a reputation that opened doors across Nashville's construction community. But I didn't have leverage. I didn't have ownership. I didn't have the kind of security that comes from controlling your own destiny. I started by taking inventory of what I actually had to work with. Over the 12 years since I'd started working construction, I'd lived below my means and saved aggressively. While other guys my age were financing new trucks and taking expensive vacations, I'd been banking most of my overtime pay and living off my base salary. Every bonus from completing projects ahead of schedule, every extra payment for working weekends and holidays, every side job helping friends with home renovations, all of it had gone into savings. When I calculated everything, including the certificates of deposit I'd been rolling over for years, and the small stock portfolio I'd been contributing to since my mid-20s, I had just over $38,000 in liquid assets. It wasn't enough to buy a business outright, but it was enough to start serious conversations about partnership opportunities, enough to demonstrate commitment and financial responsibility to potential investors or collaborators. More valuable than the money, though, were the relationships I'd built over more than a decade in Nashville's construction industry. I knew every major contractor in Davidson County, had worked alongside most of the crew chiefs and project managers, had developed professional relationships with suppliers, inspectors, and business owners who might be looking for investment opportunities or partnership arrangements. One relationship that stood out was with Rico Valdez, a general contractor I'd worked with on 3 major projects over the past 5 years. Rico had started exactly where I was now, as a crew leader with big ambitions and limited capital, but he'd made the jump to business ownership in 2020 and had built something impressive. His company, Valdez Construction, had grown from a 3-man operation to a team of 15 employees handling everything from residential additions to commercial renovations across Middle Tennessee. Rico understood the construction industry from the ground up, but more importantly, he understood the financial side of business ownership. He'd successfully navigated equipment financing, bonding requirements, insurance considerations, and all the regulatory complexities that separated successful contractors from those who failed within their first 2 years. He trusted me because we'd worked together on challenging projects where my leadership and problem-solving skills had made the difference between profit and loss. When I called him on a Wednesday afternoon in early July, I didn't waste time with small talk or lengthy explanations. I told him I was ready to make a move into business ownership and asked if he'd be interested in hearing about an opportunity I'd identified. Rico had always been direct in his communication style, and he appreciated the same approach from others. "I'm listening," he said. "What did you have in mind?" There was a Ford dealership on Murfreesboro Pike called Thompson Ford that had been struggling for the better part of 18 months. I'd driven past it countless times heading to job sites in South Nashville, and I'd noticed the declining foot traffic, the reduced inventory on the lot, the general sense that something wasn't quite working the way it should. The dealership wasn't fancy or flashy. It specialized in used trucks, fleet vehicles for small businesses, and basic automotive service work. But it had a prime location on one of Nashville's busiest commercial corridors. And it had the kind of established customer relationships that took decades to build. I'd actually done some work for them 2 years earlier when their service bay needed electrical upgrades to handle newer diagnostic equipment. That's how I'd met Carl Thompson, the owner, and learned a bit about his situation. Carl was 67 years old and had been running Thompson Ford for 26 years. He'd built the business from nothing, starting with a small lot and growing it into a legitimate dealership that employed 8 people and served contractors, small business owners, and working families across Davidson County. But Carl was tired. He'd had a heart attack in late 2023, and while he'd recovered physically, the experience had changed his perspective on work and life balance. His 2 adult children lived in other states and had careers that had nothing to do with automotive sales. Neither one had any interest in taking over the family business, and Carl had been quietly exploring his options for succession planning without much success. The dealership had potential, but it needed fresh energy, updated management systems, and someone who understood both the automotive market and the practical needs of working people. Carl knew trucks and he knew customers, but he'd never adapted to digital marketing, online inventory management, or the social media presence that younger buyers expected from businesses they wanted to do business with. When I explained all this to Rico during our phone conversation, he listened without interrupting, asking occasional questions about inventory levels, monthly revenue, and overhead costs. By the end of our discussion, he'd agreed to meet with Carl and me to explore partnership possibilities. We scheduled a meeting for the following Thursday morning at Hermitage Cafe, a local diner that had been serving breakfast to Nashville's working class for more than 50 years. Carl looked older than his age when he walked in, the kind of tired that comes from carrying stress and responsibility for too long without adequate support or relief. I didn't waste time with extensive small talk or elaborate presentations. I told him directly that I wanted to buy a partnership stake in Thompson Ford, 30% ownership with an option to purchase the remaining 70% within 18 months, if certain performance metrics were met. Rico would provide the financial backing for the initial partnership purchase and serve as a silent investor with expertise in small business operations. I would handle day-to-day management, operations oversight, and business development, focusing on expanding fleet vehicle sales to construction companies and small contractors who needed reliable trucks and responsive service support. Carl would remain as a consultant and advisor, gradually transitioning toward retirement while still collecting income from the business he'd spent decades building. Carl's response was immediate and enthusiastic. "When can we start the paperwork?" he asked, and I could see relief flooding his face for the first time since I'd known him. Within 2 weeks, we'd completed due diligence, hired a business attorney to handle the legal documentation, and finalized the partnership agreement. By the end of July 2025, I owned 30% of Thompson Ford and was spending my days learning every aspect of automotive dealership operations. But that initial partnership was just the beginning of what would become a much larger transformation. 3 weeks after we'd signed the partnership papers, Carl called me on a Tuesday morning with news that would change everything. His voice was shaky and uncertain when he told me that his latest medical tests had revealed some concerning irregularities that his cardiologist wanted to address immediately. The stress of the past few years, combined with his age and previous heart problems, had taken a greater toll than anyone had realized. His doctor was recommending immediate lifestyle changes, including stepping away from all business responsibilities that might contribute to his stress levels. Carl had spent the weekend discussing the situation with his wife and his children, and they'd reached a unanimous conclusion. It was time for him to sell the business entirely and focus completely on his health and family. He offered me first right of refusal on the entire dealership. The building, the land, all inventory, customer lists, supplier relationships, and the Thompson Ford name itself, for $280,000. The asking price was below market value because Carl wanted to avoid the complexity and uncertainty of listing the business publicly and dealing with multiple potential buyers who might not understand or appreciate what he'd built. It was an incredible opportunity, but it required immediate decision-making and significant capital that I didn't have access to on my own. The building alone was worth at least $190,000 based on comparable commercial real estate sales in the area. The inventory, 43 vehicles ranging from work trucks to family sedans, represented another $80,000 in assets. The established customer base and supplier relationships were worth thousands more in intangible business value. I called Rico within an hour of hanging up with Carl, and we arranged to meet that same afternoon to review the numbers and discuss financing options. Rico understood the potential immediately, but he also understood the risks involved in such a rapid expansion from partnership to full ownership. After 2 days of analysis and consultation with his accountant and business attorney, he structured a deal that would work for both of us. Rico would put up 60% of the $280,000 purchase price in exchange for equity ownership, while I would contribute my $38,000 in savings, plus the value of the partnership stake I'd just acquired. We would be co-owners of Thompson Ford, with me handling all daily operations, customer relationships, and strategic development, while Rico remained a silent partner focused on financial oversight and long-term business planning. The agreement included a performance-based buyout clause. If the dealership achieved specific revenue targets within 12 months, I could purchase Rico's ownership share at a predetermined price, giving me complete control of the business. We closed the deal on a Tuesday afternoon in late August, signing papers in a conference room that smelled like fresh coffee and new leather briefcases. I walked out of that attorney's office with the keys to my own automotive dealership, my own piece of the American dream, my own opportunity to build something lasting and meaningful. I stood in the parking lot afterward, looking at the building that was now mine, and for the first time in months, I smiled a real, genuine smile that came from somewhere deep inside my chest. I spent the next 3 weeks completely transforming the business from top to bottom. The building got fresh paint inside and out, new LED lighting in the service bay that made everything look cleaner and more professional, and updated signage that maintained the Thompson Ford name while adding under new management to signal the changes customers could expect. I brought in Tony Rodriguez and Mike Sullivan, 2 mechanics I'd worked with on construction projects who understood trucks, reliability, and the importance of honest service for working people. I renegotiated supplier contracts to get better pricing on parts and inventory, established an online presence with a professional website and social media accounts that showcased our inventory and highlighted customer testimonials, and started a targeted advertising campaign focused on fleet sales to construction companies, landscaping businesses, and other small contractors who needed reliable vehicles and responsive service support. The name change to Lawson Ford happened in mid-September, and by October, we had a 2-week waiting list for service appointments and 3 local contractors ready to sign exclusive maintenance agreements for their entire vehicle fleets. Word was spreading through Nashville's construction community that there was a new dealership in town, run by someone who actually understood the practical needs of working people, someone who wouldn't try to oversell unnecessary services or push financing arrangements that didn't make sense. I didn't post about the business transformation on social media, didn't announce my success to anyone who hadn't directly asked about my career plans. I just worked, every single day, early mornings and late nights, learning every detail of inventory management, customer service, and small business operations. I was building something real and substantial, something that would provide jobs for good people and serve customers who deserved honest treatment and fair pricing. Every time I walked through the front doors of Lawson Ford and saw my name on the building, my family name representing quality and integrity in automotive sales and service. I thought about that Saturday afternoon in June. I thought about Madison's laugh echoing across her apartment complex parking lot. I thought about her colleagues agreeing that my truck wasn't sophisticated enough for their professional image. I thought about that carefully crafted breakup text message designed to make her look reasonable while making me feel inadequate. In early November 2025, Nashville Business Journal contacted me about featuring Lawson Ford as part of a monthly series on local small business success stories. My initial instinct was to decline. I've never been comfortable with publicity or attention, but my accountant convinced me that legitimate media coverage would be valuable for establishing credibility and attracting new customers who might not otherwise know about our services. The photographer arrived on a cold Thursday morning in mid-November, setting up shots in front of the showroom with 2 vehicles that perfectly represented our business philosophy. A 2023 Ford F-250 Super Duty that showcased our commitment to quality new inventory, and a completely restored 1985 F-150 that looked remarkably similar to my father's truck and demonstrated our understanding of automotive history and craftsmanship. The article was published a week later, 3 full pages with professional photographs covering my background in construction, my father's influence on my work ethic and values, and the transition from employee to business owner that had transformed Thompson Ford into Lawson Ford. Within 48 hours, the article had been shared across local Facebook groups, construction industry networks, and automotive forums throughout Middle Tennessee. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, while I was reviewing quarterly financial reports, I received a notification that Madison Harper had liked the Business Journal post on Instagram. An hour later, she sent me a direct message. "Hey, just saw the article. That's incredible. Congrats on everything. The dealership looks amazing." I didn't respond. 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, she showed up at the dealership. I was in the back office when Tony knocked on the door. "Boss, there's someone here asking for you." I walked out to the showroom, and there she was, standing near the F-250, dressed like she was going to brunch, sunglasses pushed up on her head, phone in hand. She smiled when she saw me, that same bright, rehearsed smile. "Austin, hi," she said, walking toward me. "I was just in the area and thought I'd stop by. I saw the article. This place is really impressive." I nodded. "Thanks." "Seriously, I had no idea you were planning something like this. It's amazing what you've built here. Things change," I said. There was a pause. She shifted her weight, tucked her hair behind her ear. "So, are you seeing anyone?" I looked at her for a moment. "I've been focused on work. You know, I really miss our conversations. You were always so real, so grounded. That's hard to find." She paused. "I know things ended kind of abruptly between us. I was dealing with a lot at the time, and I think I made some decisions that I didn't fully think through. But I've had time to reflect, and I realize now that what we had was actually really special." I took a breath, looked her in the eyes, and said very calmly, "I don't think that's a good idea." Her smile faltered. "Oh, I just thought..." "Madison, I interrupted, keeping my voice even. You told me we were from different worlds. You said you needed someone more aligned with where you were in life. And you were right. I mean, I was in a weird place back then. You were, I said, and that's fine. But nothing's changed. We're still from different worlds. I turned and walked toward the back office. I heard the door chime as she left. The truth is, I didn't feel cold. What I felt was clarity. Madison hadn't come back because she missed me. She came back because she saw an opportunity, and that told me everything I needed to know. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to someone else. It's what you do for yourself. It's proving quietly that the person who underestimated you made a mistake they'll never forget. I still drive my father's 2004 F-150. I still value substance over status, and every day when I see my name on that building, I'm reminded that I didn't need to change who I was to succeed. Madison taught me that, and for that lesson, I'm actually grateful.